back, and it's standing here behind this bush, and it's looking down at me. And I'm like, it had to be about 10 feet from me.
Let's go.
From a retired soldier who froze as trees shook around him, to a truck driver in Ohio who chased a massive dark figure into the woods, these aren't just campfire stories. These are real testimonies from ordinary people, doctors, hunters, hikers, who swear they've seen something impossible. Screams that sound almost human, silhouettes that vanish into fog, and creatures that seem to think before they move. Tonight we take you deep into their encounters and ask the question they've never stopped asking. What did they really see? Ohio is one of the most active Bigfoot hotspots in the United States, second only to the Pacific Northwest. Hundreds of reports pour in from across the state. Sightings, tracks, and even strange, unexplainable vocalizations. But one story from the outskirts of Minerva, Ohio stands out. Josh and his family live near a chicken farm on the edge of town, surrounded by open land and thick woods. For years they brushed off the strange noises they heard at night. Then one day Josh's kids came running inside, swearing they had seen Bigfoot near the fence line by the pile of dead chickens. Josh laughed it off until he saw it for himself. It was broad daylight when it happened. Josh, along with a neighbor farmer, saw an all-black figure crossing 300 yards of open land with shocking speed. It wasn't running like a man, nor lumbering like a bear. Instead, it moved with a strange, mechanical precision, almost like a robot. Josh, who stands 6 feet 3 inches and weighs over 300 pounds, swears the creature was much larger than him. It was solid black from head to toe, with no visible eyes or facial features. Just a massive, dark figure moving deliberately across the field before disappearing into the tree line. Josh is no stranger to the woods. He owns thermal equipment and often goes coyote hunting in the area. But he insists he's never seen anything like this before or since. To make things even stranger, there have been eerie vocalizations recorded in the area, deep, powerful calls that don't sound like dogs or any known wildlife.
What I'm recording right now sounds very similar to what I heard back in 1991 or 92. Does not sound like a dog at all.
Whatever stalks the farmlands of Minerva, it isn't just a story. And for Josh, it turned him from a skeptic into a believer overnight. Rest in peace, Mike Woolley. His story is one of the most compelling and chilling Bigfoot encounters ever told. Mike was from CO.AG, Louisiana, and in December of 1981, his life changed forever. It was a beautiful, cold winter day, about 30 degrees, perfect for deer hunting. Mike parked his truck halfway down an old logging road and walked the rest of the way to his deer stand, hoping to keep the area quiet and avoid spooking the deer.
My name is Mike Woolley. I'm from CO.AG, Louisiana. I had an encounter back in December of 1981 with a Bigfoot while deer hunting. It was a beautiful December day, perfect weather for a hunt. Temperature was about 30 degrees. I got to my deer stand that evening, about 3 o'clock, got on it, and I was sitting there and I was facing to the north. And my deer stand was located about 1.5 miles down old logging road.
He hadn't been in his stand for more than 30 minutes when a young doe came crashing out of the briars from the east. She was drenched in sweat, breathing hard, and ran right up to Mike's stand before collapsing beside it. Whatever was chasing her was close. Mike's first thought was that it must have been a big buck, so he prepared himself for a shot. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement.
Well, it must have been, I hadn't been there no more than 30 minutes, and this little young doe deer come running from the east out of some briars and brush that there's no way a human could walk through that. And first thing hit my mind, it was a big buck. So when I raised my head back up, I was turning my head, and out of my peripheral vision, I seen something hop to a tree. And it was tall, about 7, 8 foot tall, and it was black, real hairy, like a gorilla.
Something darted behind a tree. When Mike turned his head fully, he saw it. A massive figure, easily 7 to 8 feet tall, black or very dark brown, and covered in thick hair. At first, he thought it had to be a man in a suit, some kind of prank. He even spoke out loud, telling the figure to take off the costume and leave. But the creature didn't move. It just stood there, staring at him with an expression Mike could only describe as sinister.
So the first thing hit my mind, it was somebody dressed up in a suit trying to scare me off my good deer hunting spot. Well, immediately I go to talking to this thing, telling it, you know, take the head off, get out of here, you know, don't come back, you know, this ain't no joke, I don't find it funny, you know, just leave. Well, this thing was just eyeballing me, you know, looking at me and really giving me some sinister looks. And I knew right then, I said, you know, something ain't right.
Through the scope of his high-powered rifle, Mike got a clear look. The creature's face was disturbingly human-like. He could see the eyelashes, the jawline, even the flat, human-like teeth. That's when fear truly sets in. Suddenly, the creature let out a roar, deep and powerful, like a lion.
And I looked through the scope at the creature. It was cold, you know, the moisture was coming out of its mouth, its nostrils. It looked really, really human. The face was human. The eyelashes, I could see the eyelashes, you know, the eyes, the teeth were big, big teeth. I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it, and it's really PO'd at me. And it lets out a roar like a lion.
From somewhere about 100 yards away, a loud whistle responded. The creature turned its head, whistled back in the same tone, then looked back at Mike. He knew he was in trouble. Mike jumped down from the stand and ran toward his truck, crashing through the brush. Behind him, he could hear the creature bulldozing its way through the woods, closing in fast.
Well, about 100 yards to the northeast, there's this really, really loud whistle comes back. I'm in trouble, big trouble, because I'd heard about them. Well, I jumped in off my stand and I'm running to the west to get to my truck. And I look over my left shoulder and this creature is running through the woods and it is just moving brush. It's running through the brush and it's bulldozing the brush down. And I knew, man, this thing is gonna get me. It is mad. It is PO'd, it's gonna get me.
When he reached his truck, he had one chance. He spun, fired a warning shot, and the bullet splintered the bark of a tree just feet from the creature's face. That was enough. The creature stopped. As Mike jumped into his truck, he caught sight of a second one, the one that had been whistled for, standing farther up the logging road. There weren't one, but two of them. Mike drove away, shaken but alive.
Well, I got in a truck, I'm driving off, I look in my rearview mirror, and lo and behold, his buddy that he'd signaled had been tailing me coming up the logging road. I didn't have but one chasing me, I had two. Well, they kind of stood there and looked at each other as I was driving off.
His advice to anyone who ever encounters one of these creatures is simple. Do not engage, do not make eye contact, and do not point a gun at them. If you do, you might not make it out alive.
My recommendation to anybody, if you ever have an encounter in the woods, is don't fool with them, don't make eye contact, don't point, and surely don't point a gun. Do not engage this creature, because if you do, you will lose.
It was winter of 1988, the kind of cold that hangs heavy in the air and turns every breath into fog. Snow lined the narrow roads near Salt Fork State Park in Ohio, and the forest beyond the asphalt looked like a sea of white-dusted trees. Rich LaMonica was finishing up his deliveries for the day, driving his route just like he had 100 times before. The world was quiet, the only sound the hum of his truck's engine and the occasional crunch of snow beneath the tires. Then something caught his eye. Up ahead, on the edge of the woods, something massive moved. At first, Rich thought it might be a deer. This was Ohio, after all. But this was no deer. The figure was enormous, broad-shouldered, and completely covered in dark fur. Black, or maybe a deep chocolate brown, it stood out starkly against the white snow as it stepped toward the tree line. Without thinking twice, Rich hit the brakes.
Taking the straightaway, about halfway through the straightaway is when I noticed the creature, or whatever it was, going through the woods. I couldn't see if it had hair on it, but it was definitely black or a very, very dark brown.
The truck slid slightly on the icy road before coming to a halt. His heart was hammering. Curiosity and adrenaline kicked in as he jumped out of the cab. If that really was Bigfoot, he wasn't about to let it just disappear without trying to get a better look. Rich ran toward the tree line, boots crunching on the icy ground. But the figure was fast. By the time he reached the edge of the woods, it had already vanished into the dense, snow-laden trees. All he could see were a few faint impressions in the snow.
But it was definitely black or a very, very dark brown from head to toe.
LaMonica quickly pulled his truck over.
I hopped down and ran back to see if I could glimpse it any further. It was huge. It was absolutely wide and huge. Because of the outline of the snow and no trees and no leaves, I was able to see it very well, in fact.
Spaced far apart, too far apart to be a man's stride. He stood there in the silence, catching his breath, listening. The forest was still. No birds, no movement, just the echo of his own breathing. Whatever it was, it had been bigger than any man he'd ever seen, with a build that looked more like a linebacker than a human. For years after, Rich replayed that moment over and over in his mind. Could it have been a bear? Maybe. But bears don't walk upright like that.
Around, but I didn't see anything moving. And because I was scheduled to make deliveries, couldn't stay too long.
And whatever this was, it had been on two legs, moving quickly and deliberately toward the cover of the woods. Salt Fork has a reputation as one of the biggest Bigfoot hotspots in the United States, with dozens of reported sightings over the years. Rich had heard those stories before, but on that snowy day in 1988, it stopped being just a story for him. He may not have gotten the perfect look at the creature, but he saw enough to know one thing: there was something out there that didn't belong. And it was watching the road just as closely as he was watching the woods.
My name is Wendell Brockway. I'm talking about a thing that happened to me in 1958.
Sometimes the most powerful stories come not from hunters or adventurers, but from the voices of our elders, men who have nothing to gain and no reason to lie. Wendell Brockway is one of those men. A hard-working soul, honest and steadfast, he carries with him a memory that has haunted him since 1958. It was Union Valley, Texas. Wendell was there with his brother-in-law, Joe Anderson. Together, they had a big truck to unload, just another day's work under the hot southern sun. Nothing about that evening suggested what was about to happen, until something extraordinary shattered the routine.
I was about 1 mile out of Union Valley, Texas, and me and my brother-in-law was down Joe Anderson's hauling hay. We had a big truck to unload, and we unloaded it, stacked it in the barn, and then we got ready to come home, and we got in the car.
Wendell speaks with the weight of years, his voice steady but heavy with truth. He describes what he saw that night. Not a bear, not a man, but something else entirely. Something bipedal, massive, and unnatural. Its presence was undeniable. Every detail remains etched into his memory as clear as the day it happened.
We're driving down the road, and there's a old house on the left-hand side and an old corral. And we went by it, and as we was going by it, I looked over to the left, and I seen this big white thing standing up yelling.
And yet the hardest part wasn't the sighting itself. It was what came afterward. His own family, his own blood, didn't believe him. They dismissed his words, treating them as imagination or a trick of the night. But Wendell never wavered. He remembers it all too clearly. He says even now, all these decades later, the images return with vivid clarity. If Joe were alive today, Wendell insists, his brother-in-law would confirm every word. Together they had witnessed something beyond explanation.
I told my wife about it, my sister, but they didn't believe me. But I actually seen it. And James Fred Taylor was my brother-in-law. And if he was still alive, he could tell the same story. But that was back in 1958.
Sitting there, his eyes still carrying that weight, Wendell admits he's simply glad he can still tell the story. To him, it's not entertainment. It's not folklore. It's testimony. A moment in time that branded itself on his life forever. And for those who truly listen, it's impossible not to feel the gravity of his words. Dr. Hannah Strait is known for her adventurous van life explorations, taking her rugged F-250 truck camper into some of the most remote and breathtaking landscapes in America. But on this trip, her usual off-grid serenity was interrupted by something that still has her shaken. It started as a normal night. She parked her truck, set up camp, and climbed into the bed above her cab to sleep. The world outside was quiet, the stars bright above the dark wilderness. But sometime in the dead of night, she woke to a sound no camper ever wants to hear. Something moving around her truck. At first, she thought it might be a curious animal, maybe a raccoon or coyote sniffing around. But then she heard the sound of rummaging, deliberate and heavy.
So I wasn't even going to record this video, but I honestly can't even comprehend what I saw last night. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere. I'm not going to disclose where because I don't want a million people coming out here trying to figure out what I possibly saw. I was sleeping, dead asleep last night above my cab. All of a sudden, I heard something rummaging through my cab. I was trying to be super quiet, super still. I didn't want to move because I didn't know what was in the back of my truck.
That's when she saw it. Something massive. Dark, tall, and standing upright, the figure moved with startling precision, clearly bipedal. And then, just as suddenly as she spotted it, the figure turned and bolted into the darkness, vanishing into the tree line. The most terrifying part? Her doors were unlocked. She had been sleeping alone, vulnerable, and whatever it was had been just feet away.
And I rolled over and peeked through the window, and I swear there was like this huge thing standing there going through my stuff. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere. There's no way it's a person. I'm miles from civilization. I always lock my doors at night. I must have forgotten. He must have heard me, or whatever it was heard me, because it dropped everything and scampered off into the woods behind me, like ran. It was on two legs, so it definitely wasn't a bear, because last time I checked, I've seen a lot of bears, and bears run on four legs.
Shaken but determined, Dr. Hannah decided she wouldn't just pack up and leave. Instead, she prepared herself for the night ahead. She set up her camera gear, positioned her lights, and decided to stay awake and alert. This time, ready to capture whatever came near her camp.
This is a switch I'm going to use if I see whatever it was lurking in the woods. I'm going to flip the lights on, turn the camera on, and hopefully I can get it on camera. Well, I didn't get much sleep last night for obvious reasons because I had an unidentified creature crawling around in the cab of my truck. And tonight, I want to stay up all night so I can potentially catch it on camera.
Hours passed. 3 tense, silent hours of waiting, listening, scanning the shadows. Every crack of a twig made her heart skip. Then, she thought she saw something, a shadow moving between the trees. That was enough.
Still waiting around. Haven't seen or heard anything. It's getting kind of late. Did you see that thing? I wonder if the outside camera got it.
Dr. Hannah decided to trust her instincts. She packed up her things, climbed into the driver's seat, and moved on from that spot. Whatever had been out there, she didn't plan on sticking around to give it a second chance.
I don't know what that thing was, but that was insane. I've never seen anything like that creature before. It's just ripping through the woods. It is terrifying, and I need to get out of here right now.
Her story is a reminder that van life isn't always serene sunsets and campfire nights. Sometimes, the wilderness looks back. Dawn was foggy that morning, the kind of eerie fog that rolls through the trees and lingers low to the ground, swallowing the forest in a pale, ghostly blanket. Deep in the remote forests of New Mexico, Emilio sat inside the small family cabin. He was just a boy then, curious, restless, and used to waking early to the smell of breakfast. This morning, though, was different. Something felt wrong.
There was a fog, like a low mist hovering over the ground a little bit, but I couldn't see anyone.
He remembers sitting up in bed, the hair on the back of his neck already prickling before he even heard it. The sound of something shifting outside, crunching through the damp earth. At first he thought it must be his mom, moving around outside near the porch. The fog was thick, but he could still see through the window enough to catch movement. Then he saw it.
I heard in the distance, it sounded like someone was walking on the driveway. I thought it was my mom coming back to make breakfast. But then I saw this thing, and he was standing off in the distance. It was maybe about 50 yards or so.
About 50 yards away, in the mist, stood a figure unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was tall, far taller than any person, and it looked like it was wearing the skull of a deer, complete with massive antlers that branched like twisted black tree limbs. But what froze Emilio in place wasn't the antlers, it was the face. The skull's hollow eye sockets were nothing but black pits, empty, endless voids staring right back at him. Terrified, Emilio slid the window shut and dropped to the floor, his heart hammering in his chest. He tried to convince himself it was a trick of the fog, a shadow, anything but what it looked like. But before he could calm down, he heard it. Footsteps. From behind the cabin. He froze. How could that be?
The eyes, should be, you just see black holes. I kind of got scared, so I hid below the windowsill.
The thing had been 50 yards away only moments ago. The sound of those footsteps crunched closer, circling the cabin. And then came something that turned Emilio's fear into full-blown horror. A voice. It was his mother's voice, calling his name from the front door. At first, Emilio's heart leapt. Maybe it really was her. Maybe he had just scared himself over nothing. But something felt wrong. His mom never called him to open the door. She would have come inside herself. The voice came again, this time sharper, almost impatient. "Emilio, open the door." Something deep in his gut told him not to move, not to respond. And as if to punish him for ignoring it, the voice grew deeper, more guttural, less human with each call. The knocking started then, slow, heavy bangs against the wood that rattled the entire frame of the cabin. Emilio curled up against the wall, refusing to move. And then, silence. After a long minute, he heard slow, deliberate footsteps crunching away from the door, fading into the trees. When he finally worked up the courage to peek through the window, there was nothing. The clearing was empty.
It just stopped hitting the door. It stopped asking to come in. I heard loud footsteps leaving the porch. And when I looked back up, it was gone.
When his parents returned from the lake later that morning, Emilio told them what happened. They brushed it off, saying it must have been a deer in the fog. But Emilio knew what he saw. He knew what he heard, and he never forgot.
My parents got back to the cabin. They said that they didn't see anything. They didn't hear anything while they were down at the lake. They didn't hear anything walking up. I asked my parents, if there was anything in the world that was like that. They said no.
6 years passed. Emilio was no longer a boy, but a young man. And despite the lingering trauma, he never lost his love for the wilderness. In fact, it became his escape. The forests still called to him, and he still answered, though part of him never stopped questioning what he had seen that morning.
For years, I questioned what I saw a lot. It would come up, every now and then when we're sitting around campfires or hanging out with friends. But it wasn't always on my mind. And
one summer day, while hiking high up on the Madison Range in Montana, he found himself completely alone. The sun was warm, the sky clear, and for a while, everything felt perfect. He walked along the ridgeline, breathing in the crisp alpine air, listening to the birds singing all around him.
Madison Range, so it was around 12,000 feet. There's not much wildlife up there, and my plan was just to hike from peak to peak.
Then, suddenly, the birds went silent. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Emilio stopped walking, every sense straining, his pulse quickening. He felt it before he saw it, that same oppressive feeling from childhood, the weight of unseen eyes watching him. And then he saw it.
There wasn't any bird singing, there wasn't any bugs, there was nothing. I started feeling really anxious. It seemed like someone was watching me.
Just ahead, between two pines, the creature stood, exactly as it had 6 years ago, tall, gaunt, antlered, and staring directly at him. The deer skull glowed pale in the mountain sunlight, its black eye sockets locking him in place. His breath caught in his throat, every childhood memory rushing back, every ounce of terror returning all at once.
I saw something standing off to the side. I thought maybe some crazy up in the woods of Montana playing jokes on people. I've seen deer, elk, moose, all that, and it wasn't anything like that.
This time, though, it didn't move toward him. It just stood there, as though daring him to take a step closer. That was the last time Emilio saw the creature. But he has no doubt it's still out there, waiting. For him, the experience was more than a nightmare. It was a warning. And somewhere, deep in the forests of Montana, something with a deer's skull and black hollow eyes is still watching. Some encounters stay with you forever. For Paul, a retired soldier from Jackson, New Jersey, the strange and unexplainable began long before the Army. His first brush with the unknown came when he was just 6 years old.
Classical, I could say conical-looking head, but I saw a shadow moving across the curtains because my mom had these. They were like not solid, but you could still see out. But I saw it moving, and then I saw its shadow. Like, what I'm saying, it's here, and then the shadow's like. Cause the shadow across there, and I was looking at it like, what is that? I'm only like 6, 7 years old.
As a boy, he would often hear scratching at the window in the dead of night. At first, he thought it might be branches in the wind. Curiosity got the best of him. He pulled himself up, peered through the glass, and froze. A figure, large, dark, and unmistakably walking upright, crossed the front yard in slow, deliberate strides. The sight was so surreal that his young mind struggled to process it. But it didn't end there.
I can't explain it. I don't know what it was. But I'm really, really fortunate that I had curtains like that in my room, because if this thing was standing outside my window and it was looking, I seen it staring in, I'm really glad I only heard the scratching and never got to look at his face, because I think things would be a lot different for me right now. But I thank the man upstairs for like not letting me see that one. I'm glad I just saw the silhouette and not his mug in my window like some people have.
After that, strange events became part of Paul's life. Odd sounds outside his home, a constant sense of being watched, and the eerie feeling that something or someone was always nearby. That early experience etched itself into his memory, and when he joined the military, he carried that fear with him.
And it was back in the day, Jackson was very rural. It was farms, country, cows, and we had cows. We were on a farm. Every now and again, I would hear like scratching on my window. Didn't think nothing of it. And then I left my room because I turned the light off and I went out into the living room. You know, the dining room, living room, and then the living room had my parents had these big bay windows.
During his time at Fort Bragg in the early 1990s, Paul experienced something even stranger. Out in the field on a quiet night, he saw 3 glowing orbs moving toward him. First red, then green, then blue. They moved in unison, gliding silently across the darkness. The lights didn't behave like flares or anything man-made he recognized, and as quickly as they appeared, they were gone, leaving Paul staring at the empty night sky, shaken and more confused than ever.
The red orb was a dull red and it illuminated the whole area red. So when it went from my, right to left, it illuminated and you saw the trees move, and it went down, then a green orb, and then a blue orb. And you're like, what the heck was that? And I'm looking like that, and then all of a sudden the trees above me started like going crazy. And all I can describe it, you ever been in the trees and the helicopter's hovering above you? That's what it looked like. It was like a downwash from a helicopter above you, but there was no noise.
But nothing could prepare him for what came years later, after he had left the military. He was working as a loader operator near the Jackson-Manchester border, a remote area with miles of forest. It was a bitterly cold Monday morning, around 6:30 a.m. The kind of morning where the cold bites through every layer of clothing. He had just started his routine, firing up the heavy equipment. As he walked back toward his truck, the world went still, and then it came.
So the one morning, it had to be late December, early January, and it was like 6:30 in the morning. It's still black out, it's dark. And it was like maybe 10 degrees out. It was cold. So I cranked up all the machines, let them run so that, all the oil and fluids get all warm so I can move them. I parked my truck in the hole, and it's about a half mile. I had to walk back to get the machines.
A scream tore through the tree line, so loud and guttural it stopped him dead in his tracks. It was nothing like a coyote or a fox cry. This was deep, primal, almost human, but far too powerful. Paul's military instincts immediately kicked in. He scanned the tree line, every sense on high alert. The scream came again, this time closer, and he saw movement. Massive trees shaking, something big coming through the brush.
And it made the hair stand up. I had a cup of coffee and a butter roll in my hand, I was just drinking my stuff and walking to get and I actually spun around, and I don't remember touching the ground. I just remember, and I'm looking back towards my truck. And then I see these pine trees moving, like something's coming through these pine trees, and it's TO'd. And it's coming towards, like, the edge of the tree line that's up on that.
At that moment, panic set in. Paul had faced danger before, but this was different. This wasn't an enemy soldier or a hostile situation he had trained for. This felt wrong. His body went rigid, his feet rooted to the frozen ground.
I'm too far to my truck to try to run to it. So I just said, you know what? This is all in your head. Don't worry about it. Even though I seen those pine trees move. Something moved these pine trees, physically moved these pine trees.
Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it. A towering silhouette stood among the trees. Broad shoulders, massive frame, motionless but radiating a presence that sent adrenaline flooding through his body. The air felt charged, almost electric, and Paul swears he could feel its anger, its rage, directed squarely at him. He felt completely exposed, vulnerable, like prey.
And I said, I started going through in my mind, my dad, they're not going to find my body. They're not going to find my body. Because this thing, whatever it was full of anger and rage. It stopped, and I guess these things can read your mind. They say they can, but I don't know. But I sat there, and I said, man, I survived all this crap from the military.
At that moment, his mind started racing. He thought of his family, his mom, his dad, and the horrifying possibility that no one would ever find his body if this thing decided to attack. The thought of death out there, alone and in the cold, was all too real. Many people ask him why he didn't do something, why he didn't grab a weapon or try to scare it off. But Paul is blunt. He was unarmed, carrying nothing but his coffee. Confronting it would have been suicide. His every instinct told him not to move, not to provoke it. The two of them stood there in silence, man and beast, locked in a standoff. Paul says he could feel it thinking, calculating, almost as if it was reading his mind, weighing its options. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. The forest grew quiet again. Paul never had another encounter like that, but the experience left him forever changed. Even now, as a retired man, he speaks with a mixture of awe and fear when recalling that morning. For Paul, there's no question about what he saw that day. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a bear. Whatever it was intelligent, powerful, and terrifyingly close. And for him, that moment still feels as real and immediate as it did all those years ago. Imagine being in the middle of nowhere, Dry Fork, a remote area of wilderness tucked deep in America's heartland. No traffic, no towns, just tall trees.
Dry Fork. We were here about 6 weeks ago in the Red Cloud area. We found a couple of bedding spots that looked like some large.
Miles of silence, and a sky so dark that it makes you feel like it is trying to keep secrets. But to the Red Cloud team, that silence was anything but peaceful. They weren't hikers, they weren't campers. They were investigators in the world of unexplained encounters. On this trip, it wasn't ghosts or UFOs they were chasing. It was something far more dangerous.
You know, you got to be out there looking for Bigfoot in almost all conditions, I believe. And it was extremely cold last night.
Bigfoot. It began like most of their expeditions, silent and calm. A bit too quiet. Cameras rolled, flashlights swept the underbrush, and radios came to life with check-ins. But the deeper they went into Dry Fork, the more the woods changed. The energy, the pressure, the pure weight of the place. Something was off. Then, the howls began.
Could have been, could have been. Sure sounded like one.
They were not coyotes, not wolves. These were deep, guttural, and loud enough to shake the trees. Each one sent a fresh jolt of fear through the crew member's spine. It wasn't just the sound, it was the feeling behind it. As if something massive was telling them not to come closer. And then, something moved.
I know there's a lot of guys out there that would film that and say that's a suspect Bigfoot activity, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say...
Caught in the camera's low-light feed was a figure, tall, broad, and fast. Too fast. It ducked behind a tree just as the cameraman spun around. Nothing. Just thick bushes and pitch black beyond the limit of their lights. But the forest wasn't done.
Because that root system has to get like a certain size before it starts sending up the really good shoots.
And it's very so long-lived.
Rocks began to fall near the group. Not natural, not gravity. Thrown, purposefully, from the trees.
Remember when we went up there and I found those ones last year? I cooked all those ones up and they were excellent.
Well, I know that those morels smell really good.
The crew froze in shock. You can hear it in their voices. Half adrenaline, half fear. Someone observed that this seemed like they were being hunted. No one could be heard laughing it off. That's when one of the investigators caught it with night vision.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. He was going to town on this tree. Wow.
A towering shadow, partially blocked by a bush, standing still, watching, not running away or trying to hide, watching.
If we find anything on those cameras, like I said before, we will show them at the end of this video. Keep on watching. We're going to keep on squatting.
"Do you see that?" someone asked, breathless. The camera zoomed in on a grainy but unmistakable image. A broad shape, shoulders are too broad, and glowing eyes reflecting the infrared. It wasn't blinking. The team moved away slowly, respectfully.
There's on it and see a Bigfoot. Chances are by the time I get my camera up and zoomed in, so I might as well be hunting with it on the other end of the camera.
No one wanted to run, in fear that it might start following or hunting them. You don't run from a predator, especially not one that's been here long before we showed up.
We're gonna do night investigation, and then tomorrow we're gonna hike in and pick up our game cameras.
The rest of the night, quiet, dead quiet, too quiet. And that's what scared them most. Back at camp, the team reviewed the video, each clip darker than the last, and each one raising more questions than answers.
See it? Yep. Multicolored. You got grays and browns going from gray.
What had followed them? What had stalked them through Dry Fork? And more importantly, was it still out there waiting for them? One thing's for sure, they went looking for answers and instead found something far more real than a myth.
They're old.
Way old.
But they're big.
This video was shared by the Rocky Mountain Squatch YouTube channel, shared by someone named Kenneth. The morning was calm, too calm.
At the end of the video, I was walking through camp early morning when I felt like someone or something was watching me up on the ridge.
Kenneth, walking through his campsite by Carson River, felt a strange feeling of being watched. It was a guess, an instinct that most of us would ignore. But Kenneth's gut told him otherwise. Up on the ridge, something didn't feel right.
So he zoomed up in there with his cell phone video, obviously, and...
So he pulled out his cell phone, zoomed in on the area, and began recording. Little did he know, he was about to capture something extraordinary. It started off normal, as most strange encounters do. The camera zoomed in, panning slowly across the ridge. At the far edge of the frame, something moved. A hulking figure, muscular and broad, stood there, seemingly frozen for a moment. It was so tall, so imposing, that at first it seemed like it was completely out of place in the wild.
I wanted to show you zoomed before I stabilized it, because sometimes it's a little clearer. I mean, he's zooming way up there with his cell phone. There's the...
And then, in a crazy moment that left Kenneth frozen, it reached up with one arm, grabbed hold of the tree and pulled itself up smoothly. What was strange wasn't just the creature's size. It was how fluidly it moved.
A football player-sized person with all their pads and everything on and hoist themselves up into a tree. All right, I'm going to play it.
Despite its size, the figure hoisted itself up the tree like it had done it 1,000 times before. Impossible for a human or any known creatures. Kenneth's daughter, who had been reviewing the footage later, was the first to spot it.
Show you the zoomed-in clip. And then after the zoomed-in clip, I will stabilize the zoomed-in clip. I just wanted...
Initially, Kenneth had missed it. But once she pointed it out, Kenneth realized the gravity of what he had captured. The footage was grainy, but the figure was undeniable. Was this a person? A huge one, maybe. But the way it moved didn't match anything human. Was it Bigfoot? Could it be? No one was certain, but the video was beyond anything normal.
Okay.
As the video zoomed in and stabilized, the figure became even clearer. It stood taller than any man, its shape wide, bipedal, almost like a football player wearing full gear, but without any equipment. And then the most shocking part of the footage.
You're kind of walking around and then boom, up into a tree. It's just crazy. That thing's huge.
It climbed the tree with the strength and mobility of something far more powerful than any human. The zoomed-in, stabilized video revealed the incredible sight once more. The figure's movement was fluid, and the strength it showed defied what should be possible. Whatever it wasn't like anything they had ever encountered before. Bigfoot or not, it's big, it's fast, and it's up in a tree. That was the final thought as the team reviewed the footage once more. But one thing was clear as day.
Very Bigfooty. It's out of the ordinary, unusual.
The truth was out there, and this was a clue, an important one. Kenneth had captured something that, no matter the answer, no one could ignore.
More time. Amazing footage. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for sending this in to us, Kenneth.
What if the creatures we've all dismissed as myths are actually just hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to be noticed? Diesel in New Jersey isn't your average outdoor channel. They aren't just here for the hike. They're here to take you into the unknown. Boots on the ground, cameras rolling, capturing what most of us wouldn't even believe. This time they return to Area 4, deep in the woods of New Jersey.
It's the second dead animal we've seen here.
Where?
Over here at the squirrel.
Squirrel?
Yeah.
A place they've visited before. A place known for strange sounds, unexplained figures, and something that seems to be watching from the trees. Come take a walk with them and see for yourself. As they step off the beaten path, the forest is still, too still. The kind of silence that presses on your ears. Then, suddenly someone mutters, "What's that?" Just barely off trail, something shifts. The group stops. Eyes scan the brush, but the answer comes back too quickly. It's a log. Maybe, maybe not. The shape blended too easily into the environment, suspiciously still, like something frozen in mid-motion. Watch for yourself.
A blue balloon over here. Watch this line. See, like blue balloon.
Tension breaks for a moment when someone calls out, "I think I see that animal we seen here." Whatever they saw wasn't a squirrel, but the reference shifts quickly. First squirrel, then, "I see a blue balloon." A child's party decoration out here in the middle of nowhere? Odd, but it's not the first time they've seen it. "The weird thing I visit every time I come here," someone remarks. A spot known to hold on to strangeness like a magnet. Then things get weirder. A squirrel leaps toward the camera, landing near someone's face. Jarring, random, almost symbolic. But it's dismissed as coincidence. Still, the moment shakes the mood. Nature's being chaotic. Or maybe it's being used as a distraction. Another group member casually says, "Look at that axe."
Spray rubber in my face. Ugh. It's on my glasses. You get it? Don't touch the lenses.
But it's not just any axe. It's placed, not dropped, like it's been used or displayed. Right then, something shifts in the camera's focus. Watch for yourself. Between two trees, wedged into the bark, is a large shape. It's massive, brown, and doesn't move a muscle. Not windblown, not vibrating like the leaves around it. A brown, hairy giant. Almost part of the tree, almost carved from it. But the outline is too defined. Shoulders too wide. The camera lingers, unsure. Is this the moment? Is this a Sasquatch? Or a Yeti?
What's that poop? Big ass axe.
What stands out isn't just the shape, but the stillness. It's too still. Whatever it is, it's watching or hiding. And Diesel in New Jersey's team knows they've seen something not quite right. They don't scream, they don't run, they observe, they study. That's what makes their footage matter. They return to this area time and again because it gives them something. Patterns, symbols, and encounters that are just clear enough to keep you awake at night. Watch for yourself. As they move on, the team remains quiet, reflective. Even playful moments, mentioning poop, joking about squirrels, are just noise covering the unease, because once you see something that shouldn't be there, everything else starts to feel like a setup, a test. The forest begins to feel staged, like you're being watched from the wings of a play you didn't know you were in. This isn't a film set. There's no CGI, no scripted jump scare, just raw footage. A still figure near a tree that no one can quite explain. Balloons in the woods, squirrels acting strange, objects out of place. These aren't isolated incidents, they're layers of the same mystery.
Like blue balloon. And then the weird thing I visit every time I come here.
And every time Diesel in New Jersey returns, something new gets added to that puzzle. Watch for yourself. Not every video ends with a scream or a chase. Sometimes the silence is the scariest thing, the quiet after the encounter, the moment when the footage stops and the mind takes over. And that's exactly what this channel captures. Those subtle but chilling pieces that hint at a larger presence just beyond our understanding. The camera may turn off, but the woods don't forget, and neither will you. Watch again. See what you missed the first time. Maybe that log wasn't a log. Maybe it blinked. What if something's been living just beyond the tree line, watching us, but never making itself fully known? On the quiet edges of New York's Long Island, one man is asking that very question every day. Mike Colantonio, founder of the Long Island Bigfoot YouTube channel, is not your average Sasquatch hunter. He's a military veteran turned boots-on-the-ground researcher with a unique approach.
The most notable was they were just walking the trails.
He doesn't chase monsters. He builds trust. Instead of casting doubt, Mike casts gifts. Fruit, pastries, and even candy are left behind in remote forested areas in hopes that something or someone will accept his offering. But today's investigation, this one's different. Mike isn't in the dense woods or a mountain pass. He's on private farmland because someone called him in. Something strange was happening on this property, and it had been happening for years.
There was a tree, or they thought was a tree, right? Like a big tree that was just...
Watch for yourself as Mike begins surveying the farm perimeter and captures a strange structure deep in the tree line. A twisted, bent arch that resembles what researchers call a break. A structure commonly associated with Sasquatch territory markers.
Most of what's going on is audible. Just hearing things that...
The landowner had told Mike something chilling. One night while working outside, they saw what they first thought was a tree, but it moved, slowly, like it had intent, like it was watching them.
Fox in here forever. They've had birds of prey in here forever.
Mike listens carefully, never jumping to conclusions, but he knows what they saw lines up with classic Sasquatch behavior: perfect stillness, camouflage, and deliberate observation. As he walks the property, Mike stops near a gifting site he's visited before. What he finds there makes him pause. An old bait pile, tampered with. Something had taken the fruit, but not in a way a raccoon would. No gnaw marks, just gone.
Look at this. This is very typical. Not 10 feet off trail, we have...
He notices subtle changes in the ground cover, crushed grass, broken stems, and he marks these signs mentally. A trained eye like Mike's doesn't just look for footprints, he looks for patterns. Watch for yourself as Mike quietly scans the brush.
And snow load doesn't take trees and bend them under other trees.
And catches sight of movement behind the trees. It's fast, barely noticeable, but unmistakable to those who know what to look for.
It's back there. Right in that area. The best part about this place is I always have it to myself.
Moments later, Mike addresses something odd about the forest's energy. He's not alone. There's a distinct, almost emotional pressure. If you've followed his channel, you know he talks about this often, what he calls the quiet presence.
That would be like the tree right there, right? That they described, but it was darker. They said it was like a...
Suddenly, he stops. There's a structure near the base of a tree. 3 large limbs woven together like a low tent, not naturally fallen, placed. Mike kneels, examines it. This isn't wind damage, it's intentional. The type of formation seen time and again in Bigfoot hotspots. He documents everything but touches nothing. Then comes the audio.
We've seen that with the dogmen too. If I can find that photo, I'll drop it in here.
Off camera, the dogs from the nearby farm begin to bark, but not at Mike. Their attention is somewhere else, deeper into the woods. And then, a thud. Watch for yourself as Mike captures a distant knock. One, then a second, like wood striking wood. It echoes just enough to seem deliberate, as if answering the dogs. This is one of the most commonly reported Sasquatch behaviors, tree knocking.
I remember I was standing in this general area, looking up that way, and there's a ridge that goes up and over, and there was a...
Later in the video, Mike references something unusual, the possibility of a dogman. It's a cryptid many researchers hesitate to even mention, but he doesn't mock the idea.
Big orb. Confused me for a minute, to be honest with you.
He reflects on the shape described by the landowner, a tall, upright figure with a more angular face. Could this land be home to more than one mystery? Mike doesn't try to convince the viewer. He lets the evidence breathe.
Probably a deer. Actually, there's a game trail right there.
His voice is calm, observant, and always respectful toward the land, the people, and whatever else may be listening.
How many people talk about these things and try to communicate them, and then just because it's on the news.
As the sun lowers, Mike offers one last gift to the woods, an apple, and places it gently at the base of a tree. He thanks the forest. Then he leaves. There are no flashy endings here, just questions, a sense that something real happened.
They watched the video of that part. I give them the highlights, reels of it. And,
but not loud enough for the world to hear it all at once. Watch for yourself as Mike exits the forest line and looks back one last time. He pauses, watching something only he can see. For those seeking real, respectful Sasquatch research grounded in experience and quiet observation, Long Island, Bigfoot offers something rare, a voice of calm in a field filled with noise.
There's stuff whistling over here that might be a bird, but back that way there's something mimicking. So on this side there was like...
Could this farm be a meeting point between two worlds? What else might be roaming the edges of our known reality? Unseen, but not absent.
We're gonna have to come back here a few times because I forgot how good this spot is in the winter.
Cryptozoology, the study of such unproven creatures, walks a fine line between science and folklore. While mainstream researchers dismiss it as pseudoscience for lacking rigorous methodology, the search persists, fueled by a human desire to believe in the unknown. And that search now takes us to one of the most remote and wild places in North America, the forests of British Columbia. Before diving into the Bigfoot mystery, it's worth stating, this isn't about blindly believing every sighting. Many watching lean on logic, demanding hard evidence. That's why we turn to researchers who dedicate their lives to separating fact from fiction. One of them is Jennifer Marshall, a U.S. Navy veteran turned private investigator. She calls Bigfoot the holy grail of the zoological world. Known as Sasquatch in Native American tradition, this towering bipedal creature, often described as 8 to 10 feet tall, has fascinated and divided people for decades. The modern Bigfoot phenomenon began in 1958, when giant footprints were discovered in northern. Andrew's fascination began in childhood. "I swear I heard something that sounded like a Bigfoot call," he recalls. Clear shows massive human-like figures in their habitat. He invites them to his research area. British Columbia's wilderness is vast and impenetrable, ideal for something to hide for generations. Meeting Todd and his research partner Ashley, the team is shown videos of two individuals. Jane, a weathered-faced female, footprint site. The impressions are deep, wide, and far larger than a human foot, laid out in a left-right walking pattern. Todd also shows a high tree break he says could not be caused by wind or snow. Intrigued, Jennifer contacts Dr. Jeff Meldrum, a PhD in anthropology who has worked with Todd and evaluated his evidence. That night, the team sets up for an overnight watch. Ashley sleeps in a camper where she claims to have seen a Sasquatch. Andrew monitors thermal imaging, scanning the tree line. The signature could be anything, or something extraordinary. The isolation here is absolute, the forest vast and concealing. Todd, could it be Bigfoot's ancestor? Out here, in endless wilderness, it's easy to believe some truths remain beyond human discovery. Whether Bigfoot is one of them, that's what keeps the search alive.
What we've just heard are not tales. They're memories burned into the minds of those who lived them. From soldiers to doctors, from quiet cabins to lonely highways, these encounters leave one chilling question. What else is out there, watching us from the tree line? If you've ever seen something you can't explain, we want to hear it. Drop your story in the comments. Your encounter could be the next one we feature. Until then, stay safe. And never forget to look over your shoulder when the woods go quiet.